I've been a tax accountant for 19 years. I've reconciled ledgers for companies with 8-figure revenues. I can spot a discrepancy in a spreadsheet from across a room. So when my husband started managing our household finances 3 years ago, I thought it was sweet. He said I worked too hard, that I deserved a break from the numbers. I should have known better. It started small. David would mention our credit card bill was higher than usual, always with this little sigh like he was shouldering something heavy. "Babe, we're at $4,200 this month," he'd say, scrolling through his phone at breakfast. "I thought you were cutting back on the grocery spending." I'd pull up my receipts. $200, maybe $250. "The rest is yours," I'd say. Before we go further, if you believe every relationship deserves transparency and respect, take a moment to subscribe. It's free, and it helps us keep telling stories that remind us what trust really means. He'd smile, patient. The way you'd smile at a toddler insisting the sky is green. I felt something shrink inside me every time he used that expression, like my 2 decades of professional expertise had been reduced to a rounding error in his ledger. Then he'd say, "I had one work dinner, $60. The rest is definitely groceries and your Target runs." I'd check again that night, find his charges, 100 here, 200 there. But by then he'd already moved on, already made me feel like I was the one nickel and diming us into debt. When I'd bring it up later, he'd look confused. "I thought we already talked about this. You agreed you'd watch the spending." I never agreed. But somehow, in his version I always had, he'd pat my hand across the table. "It's okay. We all have blind spots. That's why I keep track now." David made $80,000 more than me annually. I had clients, sure, but freelance consulting never matched his salary. So when he suggested combining our accounts, for simplicity, I figured it made sense. We were married. We were partners. I just didn't realize I'd signed away my credibility, along with my account number. The thing about David's corrections is they always came wrapped in concern. "Honey, you told me you'd pick up my prescription on Tuesday." He'd say this on Thursday, holding an empty pill bottle. "You said Wednesday." "No," gently, like talking to a child. I specifically said Tuesday because I had that early flight Wednesday. Remember? I'd pull up our text thread. He'd written Wednesday. I'd show him. He'd lean in, squint at my phone. "That says Tuesday, babe." The 10th. Tuesday was the 10th. It wasn't. But he'd say it with such certainty that I'd check my calendar twice, knowing I was right, feeling somehow like I wasn't. The budget app was worse. Numbers used to be my safe place. The one language that couldn't be reinterpreted or twisted. Now even they seemed to betray me, rearranging themselves to fit David's version of events. I'd log every transaction like I'd been trained to do. Coffee, $4. Gas, $38. At the end of the month, David would pull me aside. "We're missing $700. His face serious. "Disappointed." "That's not possible." I logged everything. "You must have forgotten something." "It's fine. I'll cover it from my account, but we need to be more careful." I'd go through every line item, every receipt. My total always matched. His expenses somehow never appeared in the shared log. When I mentioned it, he'd look hurt. "I've been manually entering mine at the end of the month." "I didn't think you wanted me checking in every day. Like I'm some kind of criminal." The worst part? I'd apologize. I found the invoice on a Saturday morning while looking for our home insurance statement. David kept all our files in his office now. Another simplicity measure, but he was out running errands and I needed the policy number. The folder was labeled Travel. Inside printed emails, hotel confirmations, expense reports from his overseas projects, normal stuff. Then, tucked between 2 stapled, a receipt from something called L. Mendez Consulting, Geneva. $8,000. Dated 4 months ago. We'd never discussed an $8,000 anything. When David got home, I was still holding it. He saw my face, saw the paper. "Oh, that," he said, setting down the grocery bags. "Casual. That's for the infrastructure audit. Geneva office. I told you about it." I shook my head. "You didn't." David frowned, already turning away. "I definitely did. Back in June? We were having dinner at that Italian place. I mentioned I might need to bring in a consultant. I'd remember an $8,000 decision. I would. I steadied my voice. David, this is a lot of money. It's a business expense. My company reimbursed it. He kept talking while unpacking milk, bread, eggs, like we were discussing grocery lists, not evidence. You worry too much about my work stuff. That's not household budget. I took a step closer, the receipt still in my hand. It came out of our joint account. The reimbursement went back in. Check the deposits. You'll see. His voice had that edge now. The one that meant I was being difficult. The one he used to end an argument without raising it. I didn't check that day. It was easier to let him be right than to spend another evening proving what I already knew, watching him rewrite reality until I couldn't tell which version was true anymore. Sometimes surrender felt like the only way to stop losing. I should have. But he was already annoyed, and I was already tired of being the suspicious wife, who couldn't remember conversations, who couldn't track receipts, who couldn't do the one thing she'd built her entire career on. That receipt was my first red flag. I just didn't know yet how many more were coming. I waited until David left for Singapore. 4 days, he said. Regional audit. He kissed my forehead at the door and reminded me to update the budget app. I opened my laptop before his Uber reached the highway. 19 years of forensic accounting teaches you where people hide things. Not in labeled folders marked secret. In the margins. In the inconsistencies. In transfers that repeat just irregularly enough to look random. I pulled 6 months of statements from our joint account. Then I requested his business card records. I was still listed as an authorized user from when we filed jointly. David hadn't thought to remove me. The first night I found 3 transfers to RB Holdings. 1200, 900, 2000. Corporate routing numbers, clean memo lines. Nothing suspicious. Except RB Holdings didn't appear anywhere in David's company directory. The second night I cross-referenced dates. Every RB Holdings transfer happened 48 hours before a payment to L. Mendez Consulting. Same amounts. Different accounts? I made a spreadsheet. Color-coded? The kind I used to build for audits. When I still worked in an office with fluorescent lights and lukewarm coffee, the screen glowed blue in our dark living room. Outside, someone's dog barked twice and went silent. I barely heard it. My cursor hovered over the pattern. RB Holdings to L. Mendez. Over and over. 8 transactions. $34,000. David's company reimbursed the Mendez charges. I found those deposits. Clean. Legitimate. But the RB Holdings payments? Those stayed invisible in his personal ledger, the one he never let me reconcile. It wasn't a project expense. It was a pattern. Jessica called me about the Zimmerman audit on a Tuesday. She's 26, sharp, still thinks hard work gets rewarded proportionally. I like her. I'm pulling up the Q3 file you shared, she said. Just need to confirm the— Wait, is there supposed to be another spreadsheet in this folder? My stomach dropped. What folder? I asked. Your shared drive. There's something called Q4 Report Private Transfers. It just popped up. Sorry, I think my sync is showing your personal files. I kept my voice level. Can you read me the file name exactly? She did. I heard her mouse clicking, trying to close it, apologizing. It's fine, Jess. Just ignore it. I'll fix the sharing settings. After we hung up, I sat very still. David's company account synced to my drive for tax season. I'd forgotten. He'd never changed the permissions. I opened the file. Columns date. Amount. Recipient. Memo. His year-end bonus, $48,000, deposited December 15th. Then line by line transfers out. RB Holdings L. Mendez, something called Prestige Property Management, Zurich. The numbers were clean. Meticulous. David had always been good with Excel. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe there was a perfectly reasonable explanation for why he was routing money through shell companies and paying consultants we'd never discussed. Maybe I'd misunderstood the whole thing. No, I know what a falsified entry looks like. I've found them in corporate books, in nonprofit filings, In the careful work of people who think they're smarter than the accountant in the room, I downloaded the file, printed it, made 3 copies, put one in my car, one in my office drawer, one in a folder labeled Client Morrison Estate, where David would never look. I was done second-guessing myself. L. Mendez Consulting had no website, no business registry I could find, but LinkedIn is where everyone exists now, even people who don't want to be found. I typed the name Saturday morning. David was golfing. I had 4 hours. Lucia Mendez. Geneva. The profile photo showed a woman in her 30s, dark hair, standing in front of floor-to-ceiling windows with Lake Geneva behind her. Professional, polished. Her title, Interior Design Specialist. Not business consultant. Not financial auditor. Interior design. I scrolled through her portfolio. Luxury apartments, hotel renovations, corporate office redesigns. Her most recent post, from 3 months ago, showed a modern apartment with walnut floors and white marble countertops. The caption, New project complete. Grateful for returning clients. The background of that photo, the window, the angle of light. I'd seen it before. I opened David's Instagram, scrolled back, found it. Same window, same view. His photo from July. Long week, but the apartment's finally coming together. Hashtag work travel, hashtag Geneva life. My hands started shaking before my brain caught up. I clicked back to Lucia's profile, read her bio again, looked at her recommendations. One of them mentioned her discretion and ability to transform personal spaces into sanctuaries. Personal spaces. I could have stopped there. Could have told myself David hired an interior designer for his work apartment. That L. Mendez Consulting was just her business name. That the money, the shell companies, the hidden transfers, all of it had some boring logical explanation. But I've reconciled too many ledgers. I know what it looks like when someone's building a second life on paper, making it real one invoice at a time. I finally met the project. She had a pulse. Marion Foster's office smelled like leather and expensive coffee. We'd gone to state together, kept in touch through holiday cards and the occasional lunch. She practiced family law. I'd never thought I'd need her for that. She spread my documents across her desk. 6 months of transfers, screenshots, the Geneva apartment photo, Lucia Mendez's LinkedIn profile. Marion didn't look up while she read. How long have you known? She finally asked. 2 weeks. Have you confronted him? No. She nodded, slid the papers into a folder. Good. Keep it that way. I felt something tighten in my chest. I need to know if I'm crazy, if I'm seeing patterns that aren't there. You're not crazy. You're a forensic accountant looking at falsified expense reports. She leaned back. But here's what matters in a courtroom. Paper wins, emotion loses. You cry, you accuse, you throw his clothes on the lawn, you lose credibility. You document, you timestamp, you keep your mouth shut. You win. I thought about David's patient smile, his careful corrections. How many times he'd made me feel hysterical for questioning the smallest thing. I don't want to be that wife, I said quietly. The paranoid one, the bitter one. Marion looked at me over her reading glasses. You're not paranoid if you're right. And from what I'm seeing, you're very right. After leaving Marion's office, I went home and printed everything she'd reviewed. Every statement, every transfer, every LinkedIn screenshot. I burned it all onto 3 flash drives. One went to Marion. One went into a safe deposit box I opened under my maiden name. One stayed in my desk drawer, hidden inside an old tax return from 2019. David came home late that night, kissed the top of my head, asked what was for dinner. I smiled and told him leftovers were in the fridge. I wasn't paranoid. I was preparing. On Monday, while David was in a meeting, I opened the RB Holdings account details I'd found in his files. The routing number was Swiss, but the account accepted U.S. transfers. I sent $1. Memo line. Test. My hand hovered over the confirm button for 30 seconds. Once I did this, there was no pretending I hadn't looked. No going back to the version of our marriage where I simply trusted him. I clicked confirm. The transfer processed in 4 minutes. I went back to work, reviewed a client's quarterly taxes, answered emails, made tea, watched my phone like it might explode. David called at 2:47 p.m. Hey, babe. Quick question. His voice had that casual tone that meant nothing was casual. Did you do anything weird with the accounts today? Like what? I got a notification. A transfer I didn't recognize. I kept my voice light. Curious? From our joint account? No. From another account. Probably just a glitch. Probably, I agreed. Silence. I could hear him breathing. You'd tell me if you were moving money around, right? I mean, we said we'd keep each other in the loop. Of course, I'd tell you. The lie came easily. I'd learned from the best. Is everything okay? Yeah, totally fine. Just bank errors, you know how it is. I do know how it is. Another pause. Longer this time. Okay. Well, I'll be home around 7. Love you. Love you too. I hung up and stared at my phone. $1. That's all it took. For 3 years, he'd monitored every grocery receipt, every coffee purchase, every cent I spent. He'd made me feel reckless for buying paperback books. And I'd just proven he had an active Swiss account he'd never mentioned, funded by money he claimed didn't exist. He'd finally noticed someone was watching. The Harrisons invited us over on Saturday. Dinner party. 6 couples. People from David's company and the neighborhood. I wore the blue dress David liked and brought a bottle of wine. He was charming at dinner. He always was. Told stories about mismanaged projects in Jakarta, made everyone laugh about hotel mix-ups in Frankfurt. I smiled in the right places and refilled water glasses. Then Jennifer Harrison's asked me about my consulting work. Oh, Lisa's brilliant with numbers, David cut in before I could answer. Though she's been having some trouble with our household budget lately. Keep losing track of receipts. He grinned. Affectionate. I've had to take over the finances. Can you believe it? A tax accountant who can't balance a checkbook. The table laughed. Polite. Sympathetic. I took a sip of wine. Actually, I said, voice calm and clear, I've been doing quite a bit of reconciliation work lately. Complex stuff. International transfers, shell corporations, expense reimbursements that don't quite add up. I looked directly at David. Maybe you should check your Swiss statements before giving budgeting advice. The shift was instant. His smile froze. Just for a second. Just long enough for me to see it. Swiss statements? Michael Whitman asked. You have accounts in Switzerland? David recovered fast. It's a company account. For project expenses. You know how it is with overseas work? He laughed, but it sounded hollow. Lisa's been doing some detective work in my files. Keeping me honest. Someone should, I said softly. Jennifer looked between us. The kind of look that meant she'd be texting her husband later, asking if everything was okay with the Millers. David reached for his wine. His hand was steady, but his jaw was tight. Babe, let's not bore everyone with work talk. You brought it up. Silence. Real silence. The kind that makes people study their plates and wish they were anywhere else. David cleared his throat, started explaining. Something about audit protocols and international banking regulations, and how I'd misunderstood the company's expense structure. His voice was smooth, practiced. But I watched his fingers grip the stem of his wine glass a little too hard. For once, the table was quiet, and he was the one explaining himself. I drafted the email at 5:43 a.m. on a Tuesday. David was still asleep upstairs. I'd been awake since 4. The subject line took me 20 minutes to write. Too vague and it gets deleted. Too specific and it sounds personal. I settled on expense reimbursement discrepancies Q2 Q4 financial review. Professional. Detached. The kind of subject line that makes a CFO's assistant forward it up the chain. Paul Reynolds ran finance for David's division. I'd met him once at a company dinner 3 years ago. He seemed competent. The kind of person who'd actually open a spreadsheet attachment. I wrote 3 sentences. Attached documentation shows irregularities in expense. Reimbursements processed under project manager David Miller's account. Cross-reference these L. Mendez Consulting invoices with RB Holdings. Transfers and company reimbursement records. The pattern suggests fraudulent billing, no emotion, no accusations beyond what the numbers proved. Just the math. I attached 6 PDFs. Bank statements with highlighted sections, the Geneva apartment photo next to David's Instagram post, Lucia Mendez's LinkedIn profile, the Q4 private transfers spreadsheet. My coffee went cold while I reread it, checked the attachments twice, made sure I'd used a burner email account, not my personal one. My cursor hovered over send for a full minute. This would end his career, his reputation. Maybe his freedom if the company pressed charges. I knew that. I wasn't naive about what I was doing, but I also knew what $34,000 in falsified expense reports looked like on an audit trail. I knew what happened to companies that ignored fraud, and I knew that David had spent 3 years making me doubt my own competence, while he built a second life on stolen money and lies. I didn't hit send out of anger. I hit send because the math was wrong. David got the call Friday afternoon. I was working in my home office when I heard him on the phone in the kitchen. His voice went from confused to defensive in about 30 seconds. I can explain the invoices. There's documentation. No, I understand. Monday morning. Of course. He came to my office door, pale. They want to meet with me in legal on Monday. Something about expense discrepancies. I looked up from my laptop. That sounds serious. It's probably nothing. Some audit flagged my Geneva expenses. Happens all the time with international projects. He was trying to convince himself. Did you talk to anyone about my accounts? Who would I talk to? I don't know. Your friend Marion, maybe. Marion's a divorce attorney, not a corporate auditor. The word divorce hung in the air between us. He heard it. So did I. Right. Yeah, of course. He stepped back. I'm sure it's fine. It wasn't fine. By Wednesday, he'd been suspended pending investigation. By Friday, the company's legal team had frozen his accounts and launched a formal audit. He came home that night with a box of desk items and a face like he'd aged 5 years. Did you do something? He stood in our kitchen, still holding the box. I closed my laptop. Looked at him directly. I just sent the numbers to someone who understands them. What numbers? All of them. His expression shifted. Realization, then rage, then something that looked almost like respect. You had no right. I had every receipt, every transfer, every invoice. You put my name on that joint account, made me an authorized user on your corporate card. Legally, I had plenty of right. He set the box down hard on the counter. This will ruin me. You did that yourself. I just showed your work. We filed for separation the following week. Marion handled the paperwork. I kept the house, my business accounts, and my maiden name on all new documents. David kept his legal bills and whatever was left of his reputation. I launched my consulting practice from the home office. He'd never let me reorganize. 3 clients in the first month, 7 by the second. Turns out there's a market for accountants who actually notice when numbers don't add up. He kept his name. I kept my peace. My office smells like peppermint tea and printer ink. It's small above a bakery on 5th Street, but the windows face east, and the morning light makes spreadsheets look almost beautiful. I'm working with a new client today, Sarah, mid-30s, recently engaged. She wants help setting up a prenup budget. My fiancé says I'm overthinking it, she tells me, nervous. He handles all our finances now, says I should just trust him. I pull out a blank ledger sheet. Do you trust the numbers, or do you trust his interpretation of them? She blinks. Is there a difference? There's always a difference. We spend 2 hours building her own financial tracking system. I teach her the same things I had to relearn: how to spot inconsistencies, how to ask for documentation, how to trust her own math. Even when someone she loves tells her she's wrong, when she leaves, she looks lighter, more certain. Jennifer Harrison stopped by last week. Coffee, she said. Really just curiosity wrapped in concern. The neighborhood had heard things. David's job, the separation, Lucia Mendez's name floating around in whispers. Are you okay? Jennifer asked, like she expected me to be broken. I'm excellent, I told her. And I meant it. The company's audit closed last month. David settled for restitution and termination instead of prosecution. Lucia Mendez deleted her LinkedIn profile. The Geneva apartment lease ended in September. I don't think about them much anymore. Don't wonder where they are or what they're doing. That kind of curiosity belongs to a version of myself who still checked bank statements at midnight, looking for proof of her own sanity. I know what I'm worth now. Not in David's patient corrections or his careful rewrites of reality, but in the actual numbers, the ones that don't shift or lie or gaslight. My balance sheet is clean. My books are honest. My clients pay on time and respect my expertise. Numbers don't lie. People do. And when they stop believing your math, you stop showing them the spreadsheet. You build a new one. Audit closed. Net balance, freedom. Thank you for listening till the end. If my story resonated with you, please tap like before you go.